All right, this morning Bob is going to talk to us about defying the darkness, which sounds very pertinent to the times we're living in right now. Bob?
Good morning. My topic this morning is Christmas, defying the darkness. We have closed the door on November, turned the calendar pages to December, and what we reveal is a colder, darker month. And as I ride the streets of Abingdon, I'm already beginning to see the usual signs, put Christ back in Christmas. And yesterday I saw one that said, Jesus is the reason for the season. My initial thought is that these exhibitors have little or no idea of the real meaning of this season or how ancient it is. Yet upon reflection, I conclude that they are just doing what human beings have been doing for countless millennia, and that is defying the darkness. Without any intention, my thoughts turn to a long time ago in a place far away. It was a hard time. Work was from sunrise to sunset. The simple necessities of gathering and preparing food was an arduous task. Life was constant struggle, and we survived only by toil and sweat and blood. The land was harsh and rugged. Survival was never a given. It required a constant summoning of strength and vigilance. In these particular times, there was little hope of ever rising above one's lot in life. Though there were many, many gods, they all seemed impotent and capricious at best. But like from a wellspring of rich creative thought, the idea and a true belief that he would come sprang up. And he did come. He was born of a virgin, different from all of those who served him. The mass of people saw beauty and hope in the promises that he made of something better to come, and they were filled with joy. He promised that at the end of their time of toil, there would be rest and reward for keeping the faith, and they were of glad heart. He told them clearly, I am the way, the truth, and the light. At his birth, shepherds stood at his birth shelter. He would be known from that day forth as the Son of God, the Good Shepherd. He would be remembered and celebrated on the seventh day, and that would be known as the Lord's Day. Artists of the time would depict him carrying a lamb on his shoulder, and his birth date was eventually settled on December 25th. From that day forth, there were wonderful celebrations on his birthday. Gifts were exchanged, houses were decorated, bells were rung, candles were lit, and hymns were sung in his praise. It's different to know exactly what time these events occurred, but it was somewhere around 1,000 years before the current era. His name was Mithras, and he was the Christ. When he died, he was buried in a great rock tomb called Petra, or Peter. In 3 days, he was removed from the tomb and went to live with God. Peter or Petra, became the foundation of another church that was to come much later. Thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. That comes from Matthew 16:18. Mithras offered hope to a burdened tribal people who were literally scratching out an existence from a stingy land. As the oral traditions of Mithras began to fade and people continued to struggle to survive with little hope, except just that hope to survive, they heard of another God. He would come, born of a virgin. He was elevated above all who worshiped him. He gave them hope in a joyous religion, and he gave them the promise of something better to come if they kept the faith. He offered them a place with him and God after their earthly days. His name was Zoroaster, and he was the Christ, the son of the great god Ahura Mazda. He said clearly to them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Zoroastrianism dates back to about the 7th century before the current age. This religion is borrowed from earlier ancient religions, including those great religions of Babylon. Zoroastrianism almost died out in the 7th century because of the persecution of Muslims. There are still Zoroastrian churches today. Christian religion bears a strong resemblance to Zoroastrianism because many of their early beliefs have been enfolded into today's religion. To give you a few comparisons, Zoroaster was born of a virgin by divine conception. Evil spirits fled at his birth. He withdrew into the wilderness and was tempted by Satan. Satan is a Zoroastrian term. He was given a Bible, the Avesta, by God. He was persecuted after preaching for many years and finally put to death. He arose from the dead in 3 days and ascended into heaven to be with God. The Zoroastrian world was created in 6 days, and the 7th day was the day of rest. The 2 first humans in Zoroastrian myth were thrown out of paradise. God caused a great flood, so an ark was built, and the survivors got a second chance. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all filled with Zoroastrian ideas. Religion, it seems, is a great melting pot for all the religions that come before. In Egypt, 5,000 years ago, they prayed he would come, and he did come. His name was Horus. He was born of a virgin. His mother was Isis. Men came from the east. He was born in a stable, and a star shone in the east. The first trinity was Ra, the God Father, Horus, the Son, and the Great Spirit. His birth date was set at the winter solstice. Humans were kicked out of the garden, and there was a flood. Baptism and communion were a big part of this religion. Osiris was also one of the most revered gods in the Egyptian pantheon. Wise men announced his symbolic birth. He would be known as the Lord of Lords, King of Kings. Worship of Osiris believed that there was a resurrection and an afterlife. there was the promise of being born again. Like so many others, Osiris suffered at the hands of others, died, and was resurrected to live eternally. In Babylonia, over 4,000 years ago, they prayed he would come, and he did come. Marduk or Tammuz or any of the other 50 or so names in their creation myth. He was the anointed one, born of a virgin, the Son of God. There was a 7-day creation myth, a flood story with an ark, baptism, and a resurrection story. In another land, they prayed that he would come, and he did come. He too was born of a virgin, said to be born from the side of his mother at the level of the heart chakra. He was born from the heart in a symbolic birth. He was fresh and promising and hopeful. He offered something other than toil and struggle. He was the way, the truth, and the light. He was the path. He was the Buddha. In a nearby land, it was told that another was born symbolically in a beautiful birth of hope, and he offered the way. His name was Lao Tzu, and he gave his followers Taoism. At their deaths, these Christ figures offered their flesh to be eaten in the form of bread and sweetened wheat cakes, and their blood to be drunk in the form of nectar or wine. This was done so that their followers could symbolically ingest their gods and be more like them. There have been so many gods and Christ figures. Their stories are all hopeful ones, and they have enlightened millions of struggling human beings who had nothing to cling to except hope. These stories inspire us and help us to defy the darkness. 100,000 years of human history has demonstrated our deep need to believe in something that will lessen our fear of the darkness. So in another time, later in history, Paul, a Roman, borrowed from the millennia before his time to give us another story of hope. A young woman named Mary traveled by beast of burden to an unfamiliar land to pay taxes to an unjust authority. She had no place to stay, and comforted only by the environment of a stable, she gave birth to a son. A great light was in the sky above him to mark his presence. Wise men came to honor him. Shepherds came to praise him. He would be known as the Lord, the King of Kings, the Good Shepherd. The story of Jesus is just the latest edition of every ancient religious myth, revised and told again and again throughout human history. So this Christmas, we are breathing in what our ancestors breathed out. Religions of hope and joy have always offered promises of something better to come if we keep the faith. It has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. The retelling of our hopeful myths is one way we defy the darkness. Not just the darkness of winter's long nights, but also the darkness of ignorance and injustice. Our stories are like mortar between the bricks. They fill in the gaps so we do not have to fear the unknown. They give us comfort, even if we know they are just stories. Knowing those stories allows us to drop the veil of ignorance. Our religious stories have always offered us a place in paradise at a later time. We eat the flesh and drink the blood so we can replicate the feats of our heroes who overcame evil. We can be born again to live a better life. Our stories give us magic, and after all, we all like a little magic. Human beings believe so much in magic that when one God doesn't provide its magical promises, we find another God to believe in. When Mithras failed us, we placed our faith in Zoroaster. When Zoroaster failed to deliver our own promises, we placed our faith in Zervan. When other gods failed, we placed our faith in Jesus. When the Israelites were a very powerful, victorious, warlike people, God was very unforgiving, a tyrant. When the Israelites began to lose in battle, God was transformed into a merciful God. When our sons of gods do not lead us to their fathers, we find another Savior. We have a long history of changing and adapting to fit our needs. I think this reflects not only our need to believe, but also our ability to adapt to disappointment and find creative solutions. Human beings have always had unique ways of denying perhaps our own potential to save ourselves. Societies have never been anything but disorganized, void of well thought out hierarchies of important objectives. They are usually a bit hysterical and overreactive to political pressures. They are often well-meaning but misguided and sometimes downright bad. So humans have relied on external magic to relieve our sufferings. Our beliefs often elevate our lives, not necessarily with tangible things, but in those hard ways to define. It is uplifting to realize that at the core of every religion, love is divine. This is what this season is really about. Love, appreciation, reflection, and recognition. The Christmas that we will soon be celebrating is far older than any concept of Christianity. It has been going on since the dawn of civilization. As a matter of fact, Christmas of Christianity is a newcomer to the celebration surrounding the solstice. Since our beginning, the solstice has marked a time of harvest and a time to prepare for darkness of winter. It is a time of reflection and a time to express our thanks and a time to demonstrate love outwardly. This celebration would easily go on forever without any reference to Christianity, because it is a human celebration, much more, I think, than a religious holiday. It is the solstice, the beginning of winter darkness, our time to cling together for safety. It is our time to thank each other for what we have shared this past year. We turn on our lights in order to burn holes in the darkness. We fill ourselves with food from the summer harvest. We give gifts of gratefulness for friendship and family. And we watch cold, dark nights blow in, compressing our emotions. We do exactly what our ancestors have been doing for over 100,000 years. We watch the sun grow fainter and feel the crisp air snap at our faces. We no longer fear that some monster is eating our sun and we will be set adrift in the darkness. But there is still a sense of winter uneasiness. By leaning on each other, we know we can triumph over the darkness. We also know that at some level we are bracing against more than just long, cold nights. We are raging against the forces of ignorance and injustice. So we must struggle to light the lantern of reason. Just perhaps celebrating reason is the best reason for the season. This family, this human family, has been knocked down millions of times, but has risen from the rubble again and again. We are all a bit worn and scarred, but we never fail to get up. We have learned over a long, long time that no king, no warlord, no ideologue can live forever, and humanity will outlast them. We have learned that no war with its bombs can completely destroy us. We have learned that no dark age can stop us from thinking. And we have learned that the sun will return and the earth will once again bring forth new green buds. And we have also learned that we will survive any disease like COVID. It doesn't make any difference if you're a Christian or atheist, a Muslim or a Jew, a Buddhist or agnostic. This is a human celebration. We all stand against the common enemy of ignorance and injustice. We all must face it and celebrate life. We celebrate love expressed because it is stronger than any tyrant. We celebrate kindness shown as more powerful than acts of terrorism. Because giving has higher purpose than ideology. And because huddling together is better than standing at arms. We are far from naive. We know that there will still be wars and bombs. There will still be violence in the cities, IEDs and beheadings in the East. We know there will still be disease. There will still be the powerful taking advantage of the powerless, and the insane will still come to positions of power. But we also know there will be those who shine the light on the darkness of ignorance and injustice, because that will always give us hope. To all of our long lines of gods and saviors, we celebrate you. For every human triumph, we celebrate ourselves. To the sun and the earth, we thank you for life. We can all take our winter rest now, knowing that the sun will return. May it shine its light on all of us. We can, each in our own way, work for peace and justice and to offer love unconditionally. I wish all of you and our human family a Merry Christmas and a warm winter solstice. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.